Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Last week I was in Berlin as part of the Automotive News Congress, and in his opening address, the publisher-in-chief Helmut Kluger pointed out a very peculiar fact, that while the majority of the automotive industry is talking about crisis, some of these companies are posting record-breaking revenues as well as profits. That's one of the reasons why I'm really delighted to be with you here today, to not talk about crisis, but to talk about opportunity. And the opportunity clearly is on how the automotive innovation needs to be redefined in light of the post-PC revolution. Of course, the term post-PC revolution refers to an IT paradigm. And just to understand where the post-PC revolution comes from, it does make sense to look at the beginnings. Of course, at the beginning, it was the computing revolution. It was about mainframes, and the core value proposition was to get help, that actually the machines were helping us. So we were able and willing to sacrifice not only the way we deal with the machines and adapt to the machines ourselves, but also to bend our processes accordingly. And the next step, of course, was a huge step ahead with the personal computing revolution, the PC revolution, because for the very first time we could adapt the machines to the way our processes worked. The only downside was that these machines were still very complex to work. And so the personal computer was something that changed our lives forever, and it did so to the better. But it was very much us adapting to the personal computer. The business model behind it, of course, was selling PCs and then selling software. And software was already one of the first problems we saw, because when the software was very high from a price point of view, we did see a lot of software piracy. And of course, we try to compensate part of it and amend the business model with services. Now, with the post-PC revolution, it was an evolutionary step, but also a revolutionary step, because the main revolution was that no longer we were adapting to the devices, but the devices were adapting to us. And the best indicator, of course, is that we no longer need a user's manual to understand how these things work. Also, it was not only about the hardware, but it was much more about, or software, individual software. It was much more about mobile solutions. And interchangeable devices didn't really matter which device you held in your hands, because the solution was available throughout all devices that we used, whether it was a handheld, a tablet, or a PC, or anything else. And so it was, there's a high degree of individualization going on. You hardly have two people around the globe who are using the same set of hardware and solution combinations. And the other thing that's really breathtaking is the seamless integration of information. So this is what the post-PC revolution is all about, and it would be pretty fair to ask the question, how does automotive innovation need to be redefined in light of the post-PC revolution? Let's do a reality check. What's available already today? Well, one of the things we see is we see apps integration, and apps is all about post-PC, right? So this is a good thing. This is the first step. But when we closely look at this, the apps integration is not quite as far advanced as we would like it to be. And I'm just going to pick one example. If you, for example, use apps integration with the web radio streaming, you may have chosen a web radio app on your mobile device. And when you want to take it to your car, you discover that the apps integration is able to do that, but not with the app that you chose, but with the app that the manufacturer chose for you. So you have to remake that choice of which web radio app you're going to use for that. With some of the other apps it works better, but there are not quite as many options, such as Facebook, etc. The second thing that's really cute is the vehicle remote. And the vehicle remote is basically controlling certain functions of your vehicle, such as closing it, locking it, opening it, finding it, and also putting on the heat or closing the windows in case you forgot. So quite a few features there. And maybe one of the original features of the post-PC revolution was the Google Send to Maps, where you log on to Google Maps and you send GPS coordinates to the vehicle, you hop into the vehicle, and you're good to go because the nav is already programmed. Also, news, weather, and all other value-added content that's available within the vehicle, and it's part of usually the navigational system. You can wirelessly stream audio and or video to the vehicle from your mobile device. Web radio is a big thing with a lot of potential for the future, not necessarily as a business model for the car manufacturer, but it's vital for the consumers if they want to bring it to the vehicle. Also, vehicles today can serve as Wi-Fi hotspots, which is good because it gives more stability to the wireless connection in the vehicle if you use your mobile device on the rear seat or anywhere else. And of course, you have customer profiles, and in principle, that's a good thing too. Customer profiles are great because they save all your settings in the vehicle. You can export them and you can import them, but I don't know whether you've tried this yourself. It's very cumbersome to really do this because you have to have a USB stick, you have to do it manually, and nobody does it for you. So there is quite a ways from the customer profiles which are available in a vehicle to the fact that of what we see on a mobile device when we just log on to a new mobile device with our ID and our password, and everything is there automatically. And there are a bunch of other features that kind of sound like the Post PC or that they fit in that direction. So quite a few things available already today. So you'll be the judge. Has the automotive industry arrived in the age of the Post PC revolution? Let me give you my answer. And let's take Audi as an example. And I like Audi a lot. That's why I chose this vehicle. This is the current model A6. And let's look at what they have to offer. If you look at the user interface, it's very well designed. It has the icons that we know from all of our mobile devices. It looks pretty good. And it has quite, as I said, as I pointed out, a lot of the features that we saw just now on that previous page was exactly what you would find in a current Audi model. If you log on to the App Store, and you see that in fine print on the bottom there, it is a pretty interesting thing that you would have 321 hits in the Apple online store when you search Audi. And when you actually check them out, over 20 of those apps are from Audi directly for different things, from marketing information, individual products, catalogs, all different kinds of things. When you do the same with the Google Play Store, you get over 1,000 hits, and as well, over 20 plus of those apps are directly from Audi. Now picture yourself trying to get the full variety of what Audi has to offer, and the first thing you have to do is to download at least 20 apps. To me, this is not quite the post-PC revolution that I had envisioned. So a lot of good content there, without a doubt, but at the same time, the ease of use and the seamless integration that we were hoping for and which we are getting used to as using our mobile devices as they're set up by Apple and Google, not quite at that point there for the automotive industry. Then, not to be forgotten, what does the driver workplace, the interior of a vehicle look like? And if you look at this picture here, it's beautiful. It's probably one of the best interiors ever put into a vehicle, and I love it for driving. It's excellent. It has that big screen and all the controls where it is, and all these great materials that you just come to love when you drive a vehicle. But at the same time, this is all about driving. It's very little about what you do when you don't drive, because of course this is a vehicle and you should drive it, correct? I had a very interesting conversation a couple of weeks ago with a senior engineer of a German peer manufacturer, and he said, as an automotive manufacturer, we create and sell hardware worth 50, 60, 80,000 euros. Yet the only value proposition to our customers remains to be the original pleasure of driving. We haven't added to that, which is not saying that it's bad, that the driving is great, it's awesome. And as I pointed out, I love the Audi, and I think it's one of the greatest vehicles designed to date, and this is probably true for all the vehicles out there today. They're the best driving machines by far compared to anything we've seen before, whether it is one of the other German premium brands, or whether it is a Ford or a GM or one of the French cars. It doesn't really matter. They're all great cars, great vehicles, great mobility devices. So let's take a look at what's been achieved so far in the automotive industry. In total, if we take a sober look at it, some automotive companies are off to a good start. But if we look from an OEM point of view, probably the most obvious thing is no money has been made in services and solution. A lot of the money comes from selling options at the beginning of the sales process. So a very traditional hardware business model, not really new, and definitely not post-PC. It's very old school. It's good. It's carrying the automotive manufacturers, but it's a clear indicator that the post-PC revolution has not been mastered from the automotive side. Also, if you look at the customer mobile devices, ease of use, the ease of use for the mobile devices is great, but once you sit down in a vehicle as a driver, it becomes very limited. You basically have three value propositions. The one is receiving or making a call, which is not new at all. It's not post-PC because it's been around since the early and late 70s. And it's really taken a hold in the late 90s in the mass market. So this is not about the post-PC revolution. One of the things you can do today, you can have the system read your email with a Siri-like function. You can also interact with the vehicle or with some of the apps or some of the functions that the mobile device is able to integrate in the vehicle. And some would do it better and some would do it not quite as easy, but all in all, the ease of use is much more clumsy if you're a driver in a vehicle trying to use your mobile device, because you're not allowed to touch the damn thing while you're driving. In total, you could sum up that it's still a feature by feature approach, and we believe that the automotive manufacturers have, or at least they give the idea that they have looked more at their own pocketbooks of how can they make money with options than they have really looked hard at the customer business case and trying to make his life easy and well understood. And I think lastly, if you look at the interior of the vehicles, they are awesome by driving standards. They're the best vehicles and the best interiors we've seen ever. And it doesn't really matter which brand you drive, they're the best vehicles we've had at any point in time. At the same time, if we take our mobile devices into the vehicle, we're still at square one basically, and not much further ahead. If you look at the big screen in the middle upper part of the dashboard, you say that's great for showing stuff. Have you driven with your eyes and your head tilted towards that? It's really taking your eyes off the road, and I'm not sure whether that's completely safe. But we don't believe that's the final solution to do things. And overall, the flexibility of the displays and the controls is just not at that level where the post-PC devices are today already. Somebody said, well, we're going to add a Siri button very soon, so we get the full voice control of Siri in the vehicle. And in principle, that's a great idea. But if we just add a button for every time we need something, we may end up in a completely wrong neighborhood. And just to illustrate, I brought you a picture of a Boeing 707 Lufthansa from the early 70s, where every function has its button and every gauge is dedicated to a certain function that you need to fly the airplane, and that's what it looks like. But at the same time, if you look at a current model, and I brought you another picture here from an Airbus A350 latest version, you see a completely different setting in the cockpit. You see those 9 huge TFT flat panel screens that are very flexible to show anything you need. A lot of the other buttons are removed, only the bare necessities are still there. They automatically adjust to whether the plane is taxiing or whether it's taking off or flying or changing course or whether they're approaching the airport again. And so a completely different design and how to reduce complexity for the pilot, even though the complexity compared to the 70s has risen probably by a factor of 10 for the pilot. It looks much cleaner, much more focused, and much more flexible than any cockpit we've seen in the past. And of course, in the window areas, you see the head-up displays for the pilot and the co-pilot, and down below you see the joysticks to fly the sucker. So a completely different paradigm on how to deal with complexity in the driving situation. Let's look at the paradigms of automotive and post-PC, because we believe that actually there are quite a few commonalities, and we start out with those. First of all, having a brand that's really great and has great reputation and building hardware that is superior design is really key to anything we see in the world. So purchase decision drivers are really no different between the post-PC and the automotive industry. Second of all, ease of use and flexibility towards customer preference and a best-in-class quality are what makes you successful in the usage phase. So satisfaction drivers are the same as well. If we move on and say, well, where is it not the same? Where are the conflicts? Let's start out with automotive. The core expertise is really driving. That's a vertical. Why is it a vertical? Because it's really understanding one topic very, very well, and that topic is driving. In order to do that, in order to create that driving experience, you need modular proprietary hardware to build the vehicle, and it's probably one of the most clever solutions we've seen in the history of the automotive. When you look at VW, MQB, or concepts like that, it's awesome by design and by flexibility. Also, you still have that expensive options paradigm, several thousand euros per option, ideally, because a lot of the profit is made with the extras and not with the base vehicle. The architecture, the electronics architecture, OEMs would love to have closed, and that's how they keep it today. Nobody else is allowed to touch it because it's safety relevant. And software of the vehicle ideally should remain constant throughout the vehicle's lifetime. And of course, service is physical and performed by retail, because that's a whole different business case by itself, earning a lot of money. If we look at post-PC, it starts out with a core expertise where it doesn't match. Core expertise of post-PC is an IT paradigm. It's a supporting paradigm. So if driving is vertical, supporting is horizontal. And that these two things don't like each other, we know that from experience every day in our companies, because the matrix organization is not something that comes easily to humans. If we move down with the hardware, with post-PC, it's a lot about standard hardware components. Apple has deviated a little bit from that path, and I think from the premium point of view that may be a success factor, but in the mainstream area, especially with the Android world and the component manufacturers that build mobile devices on Android platforms, it's still about standard hardware components. The options paradigm is completely different. Post-PC have realized at the point of sale of the mobile device, the willingness of the customer to pay for extras is extremely limited, almost zero. That's why they have developed a completely different path, where once you've bought the vehicle, the mobile device, once you're in the usage phase, you are slowly teased and tempted into upselling, upgrading. You always start for free and for zero, and then after a while you start with a little extra and you say, well, I can do that, and then after a while it becomes more expensive, and at the end you look at it and you realize they pulled out the money out of your pocket, but they done it in a way that was compatible with your willingness to spend money. Architecture is rather open as opposed to closed, and a lot of partners actually contributing to the whole customer experience. In terms of software, you don't want the mobile device software to be fixed. You want it to be flexible and upgraded frequently, and you also want the service to be virtual. You don't want it to be physical, because it happens so many times that you have to pay for every physical service and get so much goodwill that, or you have to give so much goodwill to the customers. You rather not want to do it. So the post-PC paradigm is service is virtual, never ever involve a human in it as long as you can avoid it. So in total, I think the biggest difference that we see is that if the post-PC paradigm puts the customer in the center, the automotive paradigm still puts the vehicle in the center of attention. And if you don't believe that, I challenge you, please go to a service station of any of the manufacturers here in Berlin or in Munich. What you will find is that you will be greeted with your name. Hello, Mr. Kellerman. Glad to see you again. And what is the second question they're going to ask me when I get there? The second question is going to be, what is your license plate? Because at the service station, I'm not a person. I'm a license plate, because the license plate identifies the vehicle. And my name is attached to the vehicle, and it's not the case that I'm the customer and the vehicle is attached to my name because there are a lot of vehicles over time. It's the exact other way around. And it may seem a small difference, but it's a world of a difference in terms of how all the concepts and how the processes are centering around vehicles in automotive as opposed to the customer and the post-PC. So, how do we get it right? Quite straightforward. We believe there are 8 key factors for automotive to leverage the post-PC paradigm so that it actually turns into a billion-dollar success. Let's start at how does the whole thing get off the runway? We've taken part in so many top-level management discussions where the objective was to find the business case with a customer for all of these brave new future business cases. And the sober result was we didn't find it. Telematics, remote update, all these service solution integration things, some of these hardware options we can sell at the point of sale, but all the other things where we try to make money from the services and the solutions, we just don't see the business case. We don't believe the business case is big enough to finance all the upfront investment that the automotive OEM needs. And realizing that, we say, let's not look at the customer for that business case, but let's look inside. And the biggest factor there is warranty. And I already hear the cry out, people saying, well, if we look at our books, the warranty for software and electric electronics, non-hardware issues is not that high today. And I'm saying, yeah, exactly. It's not high today. That's why you don't need it today. But you're putting so much software in the vehicle tomorrow and definitely the day after tomorrow, you're going to die from that. Why? Because we don't know a single company in the world who can create flawless software. It just doesn't happen. And because software engineers realize that they can't make it perfect, they found a different solution to it. And the solution is a remote update of the software so that the user is not bothered. If you tell us, well, it has to be safe, we're all about it, but let's talk about that a little later. Second of all, it's not only about warranty, it's also about goodwill. If you go to a service station and you will complain about your iPhone not connecting or some of the features not working right, theoretically, you should be turned away. But that's not what happens because the employees realize when they turn you away, you will probably not return as a customer. So they will go out of their way to fix your issue, and they will spend lots of money to fix your issue. But they have to hide some of it because most of it is not really refundable with the OEM. So a lot of goodwill is being created. And for example, if they have my car in the station for a week, drive a replacement vehicle, we found that a lot of these replacement vehicles are test drive or are locked onto some other issue so that they will not appear. So a lot of the money you cannot see in the books, but it's actually there, and if you put a solution to it, you will benefit from that money. The third factor, not the biggest business case driver, but it is money, it is serious money, is how much money we spend on customer intelligence, on market research, surveying customers. And we realize a lot of that stuff, even though it's expensive and it takes a lot of time, it's not very good. We cannot really use it that well. We believe that using all the insights we have from the car, what buttons the customer pressed, etc., is something that we should get systematically every time he sits down in the vehicle. We should find a way to survey the customer in the vehicle or closely thereafter using or taking advantage of his use of the mobile device and maybe the app that we have from our company onto that device. So a lot of things there, but if you look at it, if you don't believe there's a business case, maybe you can see that you should do it for risk reasons. We've seen with the recent recalls in the industry, especially Toyota being hit hard, that recalls kill you on two ends. They kill your reputation in a flash, and secondly, and most importantly, they also really present a high cost element that you can hardly plan for. If you're able to fix all this with the push of a button, without people running around, without customers being forced to drive to the service stations, that would be a huge risk reduction. And of course, for all the hardware things, you still have to do that, but you're automotive engineers, you know how to get hardware to a point where it's pretty fairly safe, and we have only a limited number of recalls. The worrying thing is really the software part, because as I said, software cannot be built perfectly, not nearly as good as hardware. And for all of these three factors, the risk reduction, the risk improvement is extremely high. So we believe the internal business case is really what pays the initial investment. The second key success factor is to decouple the vehicle life cycle from the IT life cycle. If we just start out from the innovation life cycle times, if you look at infrastructure such as fuels, roads, etc., usually it takes over 30 years for them to get onto a new level and embrace a new technology. With the vehicle's architecture, it's really 15 to 20 years depending on which manufacturer you look at. So every 4 to 5 years you see a new model, but it's not really new architecture. The architecture really remains for a longer period of time. The electrics and electronics architecture is much faster paced, 4 to 5 years. Software in the vehicle is about every year. You see a lot of changes, but let's not be forgotten, it's not like on a mobile device you just upgrade. The vehicle that's been sold with that software, even though there's a new version, does not get upgraded. So today it's not solved in the same manner. And if you look at CE devices, a new device every half year, and the software in these devices even every month or every 2 months, 3 at the most, you see revisions. It doesn't really match well if you don't find a way to decouple what's in the vehicle for driving from what's in the vehicle as an integration of the mobile devices in the post-PC revolution. The third success factor we believe is being customer-centric in terms of ease of use and seamless integration of information. Ease of use, as you see with that picture here, it has to be child's play. We don't want manuals. We don't want to engage an app on the phone before we get into the car. Everything has to be automatic, and that's how we want it. Second of all, the distribution of information across the different devices has to be automatic as well. That's what cloud service is all about. So if I take my mobile device into the car, I don't want the mobile device to transfer information to the vehicle. Actually, the vehicle is its own mobile device, and it should be fed from the cloud just as my mobile phone. And that will make two things a lot better. First of all, it will make it much easier to integrate features because you have a better interface into the cloud than you have into the myriad of different mobile devices. And second of all, it makes it much easier to control it for the OEM as well. Seamless integration of information. I've not brought automotive-specific examples. I've just brought mobile device-specific examples. If you look at the marine traffic app, there's a free version of it, and there's a paid-for version, which is $249 or something like that, to download it in the professional version. You can see every ship close to shore around the world in real time. It's breathtaking. You have a similar app for planes. You can point your mobile device up in the sky, and you see the flight number, the altitude the plane's flying, the destination, the origin, the speed at which it flies, the airline that it has. So it's breathtaking how we can take advantage of that information that in former times would be considered proprietary or extremely difficult to integrate into a consumer device at hardly any cost, but it happens today. It's reality already. And just to add a little color, I took a third example with Shazam. I'm not sure whether you've tried this yourself or not. Shazam is a software, an app that will listen to any music you hear anywhere, and then it will analyze that music, tell you what the song is, and now comes the important part, and then you can push on that little iTunes button and you go to the music store and purchase that music. So basically from hearing the song to buying the song, probably it's less than 10 seconds. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it's so easy. It's so well integrated, so seamlessly integrated that it really works perfectly. And it makes it so tempting and so easy to listen to it and purchase it. And it's probably one of the biggest drivers of reducing music piracy because it makes it easy to purchase at a reasonable price. The fourth, well, actually, let's take a detour here. Have you read these numerous articles on the Generation Y does not have a car on the top 10 wish list? I think that's true. That is the correct answer to that question. But I'm not sure it's the right question, because what it implies is that as our forefathers, our sons and daughters will also want to own a car. And I think that's a prejudice, and it's actually a misinterpretation of what the real value proposition is. The value proposition is not owning or selling a car. The value proposition is individual mobility. And individual mobility will probably for a very long time still be connected to owning a vehicle, especially if you're in the rural areas. You need to have your vehicle. If you don't travel that much, you don't do it. But if you travel a lot, or if you live inside a large city where the parking is more expensive than actually owning the vehicle, it may not make sense to own the vehicle. But if you have the choice to sit in the subway using your mobile device, and then having to put up with all the people around you. The only reason why you put up with the people around you is you get there. It's a reasonable amount of money for the mobility that you pay, and you can reuse that time. That's the important factor. You can reuse the time when you sit in the train, while you ride the subway, and you just put up with all the people around you, even though you may not like them. Now imagine the alternative would be that you could do the same thing, but you sit in one of those luxurious vehicles, as I've shown you before, and still reuse your time, repurpose your time, even as a driver, not only as a passenger. Because as a passenger, I could take the cab if I can afford it. But that's not what I mean. I talk about individual mobility, really loving that stuff. And that does not necessarily imply owning the vehicle. And I think if we would change the question, we may get completely different answers. But it's very difficult for the Generation Y to see that value proposition because nobody's really pushed that too much already. And if we step back a little bit and say, what does that tell us? If we look at the driving situations, the cocoon environment in city, rural, interstate, any type of traffic that you experience today, the cocoon environment is really the value proposition of individual mobility, not necessarily owning one. What we're focusing on is the cocoon environment and the pleasure of driving. But the time repurposing, especially for the driver, is really not been given too much attention, or not enough attention so far. There are actually quite a few situations where we'd love to not drive, even as a driver, but to really repurpose our time. When you're driving the city, when you're out on the country roads, when you're in congested traffic, definitely, and parking and pickup of the vehicle is also something where you don't really want to do it yourself. You just want the result. Not to be forgotten, there are some areas where you actually want to drive the sucker yourself, put the pedal to the metal, but that's when there's no traffic, when the roads are nice, and where you really feel like it. So actually, time repurposing for the driver does not take away from individual mobility. It actually adds to the individual mobility. We think it's one of the things that is imperative, and we believe it's very customer-centric to see it that way, to provide them with opportunities to work while driving, to relax while driving, to be entertained while driving. And we believe that this will be the single biggest push towards autonomous driving that we've seen at any point in time in the industry. Even if you're the most dynamic brand, autonomous driving will be imperative to have an advantage over companies who just provide regular, standard, old-fashioned vehicles. The fourth key success factor is zero cost per transaction for post-PC solutions. Sounds easy, but I haven't seen very many automotive engineers who believe in this. And I think it's important to understand that you don't have to believe it. It's already reality today in other industries apart from automotive. If a telecommunication company sends you an electronic invoice, the cost of transaction for that invoice is zero or close to zero. The cost for the infrastructure who produced this is probably $1 billion or more, so a lot of money, but it scales perfectly because it doesn't matter how many transactions you put over it. We see the update infrastructures from Windows, from Microsoft Windows. We see the update infrastructures from Apple and from Google. We do see the stores from Amazon or from eBay, and their cost per transaction is almost zero for the electronical side. And we haven't really embraced that paradigm, and it's so pivotal for the post-PC revolution to take a foothold and add value to the automotive industry. If you try to engineer your processes around the paradigm that zero cost per transaction is what it needs to be at the end. So all the pet peeves of automotive, personal interaction, physical delivery of physical services, they have to stop to the biggest extent possible, because that's what is not post-PC in that part. If you try to throw me out of the window with that statement, it's pretty fair and safe to do that, but the problem doesn't go away. If you look at it, and we've done that numerous times from all different kinds of angles, you have to look at it that way and try to find new ways as compared to today. The fourth success factor is we believe you have to leverage the business case across the value chain as opposed to just trying to get the money at the obvious point. If you're trying to sell software to the consumer of an automotive, of a vehicle, we don't believe it's easy to get money from. We do see a similar situation in the mobile devices industry with Apple. The first iCloud was called Mobile Me, and it was a complete disaster because it cost 79 euros. Take rate was horrible. Satisfaction was horrible. On the second try, they did it for free. The iCloud is for free, but of course it's not for free. Just the customer thinks it's for free. It's priced into the price of the device, but the consumer is not able to understand where it's priced, and overall he believes he gets a fair deal. We believe we have to think about these types of things as well, especially if you look at how much money is made in the apps. This is kind of an old stat from 2011. And it says the majority of downloads from the App Store are for free, so not paid for. And even if it's a slightly better situation today, it doesn't take away from the fact that if the automotive manufacturer wants to make money, has to find ways to put the pricing where it least hurts the decision-making of the customer. The fourth success factor is be the fastest in terms of time to customer. I don't know about you, but I think the most hideous crime that Apple has done to us is that when that little red circle lights up, as opposed to thinking, well, another bug, another shitty software, we have to get it fixed again, we believe, wait, I wonder if there's a new feature hidden in there. So they have found a way to actually couple bug fixing with feature upgrades, feature enhancements, and as an end result, they actually succeeded in making us feel quite comfortable and quite happy about updating all the time. It's insane if you really look at it, but psychologically it works. It works like a charm. And at the same time, automotive manufacturers that I've talked to, they think it's kind of, it's illegal practice or black magic or something that's unethical. But look at it soberly. It works, and I think consumers will embrace it in automotive and eat it up if they're able to upgrade the looks and feel of the HMI to the 2012 version, even though they only drive a 2010 model. They will even put up with the fact that it's slightly slower or that some of the features are not fully there, because that's the reality they see every day on their mobile devices. They love that stuff. Why not give it to them, and give it to them for free? Don't sell it. It doesn't make sense, because the benchmark is you don't pay for it. Price it in something or together with something else, and you will make it work. The other thing is partnering. If we only had the apps on the devices that were sold at the point of purchase, at the time of purchase, we would be nowhere in the post-PC revolution. The post-PC revolution is all about apps, creating new stuff. And we realize Apple hasn't come up with all the right ideas. Some of them were horrible, and some of them were just boring, and a lot of other people came up with completely insane ideas, and a lot of these people didn't make any money with it, but some of them did. And you have about 700,000 apps in the Apple Store, about a similar number in Google Play Store. These are all current stats, and that's what really creates the attraction to the customer. I have a solution for my need, and if I don't have it today, probably if I check back in 2 weeks' time, there is an app for me. Why not invite the world to really add to the vehicle in a safe place where it doesn't affect the safety of the vehicle, but where it affects the lives of the customers in the vehicle in a positive way, and really take their creativity in. And if we find that they really struck gold, we will just pull it back in, and the OEM can decide to create that app themselves or purchase that company and make it his. The seventh key success factor is, and we really believe that, is regional development and decisions. If you need to act quickly, if you need to differentiate your value propositions between North America, Europe, and Asia, picture yourself trying to convince somebody in Munich, Ingolstadt, Wolfsburg, Rüsselsheim, Cologne, Detroit, wherever, that you need a great new software feature or another thing in the vehicle through a change control board back at home at the headquarters. It just takes too long. We don't believe that's the right path to do it, and we believe there needs to be a certain amount of flexibility that every region can cater for their particular needs. And just as an example here, if Europe and North America may be all about autonomous driving as a value proposition to the driver who takes his mobile device, Asia probably may not be, and especially China may probably not, because they have a driver. They may not need the autonomous driving. They may to have a completely different thing there. And I brought you another example here, which is the Bentley. And if you look at it, it looks awesome. What you see here is actually a couple of iPads, an iPod for music, and also actually a Mac in the trunk. So it looks awesome. Does that mean they've solved the issue? I'm not quite sure. For those of you who are familiar with the Apple universe, those are 4 devices in a car. You can only activate 5. You already had 4 in the car. That doesn't make really a lot of sense to do it that way. Plus, you don't need the iPod when you have the iPad, because the music with Music Match could be anywhere. So this is only the beginning, and picture the car is sold after 3-4 years. This stuff is ancient after 3-4 years. How can you get it out? How can you integrate into the new stuff? So good starters, and of course this is what money can buy today, the very epitome of it. But we can, I think there's some room for new ideas as well here. The last and the final key success factor, in our opinion, is the OEM has to own the vehicle channel, and he has to own the risks associated with it. What does that mean? Of course, the owner of the vehicle itself, and the driver have to be telematically attached to the OEM. This is no news. This is reality today, almost with every hardware and OEM manufacturer today, and even some of the suppliers with their systems. Quite a few things have added since then. The Car2X environment, the headquarter information exchanged with the vehicle. I was talking about remote market intelligence, surveying customers about identifying all the needs of the customers, maybe the mistakes he makes in using the devices or the buttons or the functions in the vehicle. And at the same time, all the diagnostical insight that you have from the vehicle is something that you will not only want to keep with the service station, but you want to have it in headquarters. All the financial records, the rental records, the used vehicle transactional information, the customer interaction center, the training information. If you want to stay true to the ambition of not only talking about the vehicle, but also knowing your customer, all these things have to be integrated. Not necessarily physically, but with a data-driven process, with a big data process. And that means that everything you create in or out needs to somehow end up with the OEM centrally. If you tell me that it's difficult to do it with data security standards, that we don't know how to handle the legal issues, true, fair, but that shouldn't keep you from doing it. And if Germany's not the best country to start it somewhere else where it is. Because ultimately I believe you will be able to find a way that really adds value to your overall ability to innovate and to understand the customer and his use of the vehicle and his preference on how to use the vehicle much better if you do all of these. And ultimately you have to invite your partners, and this is probably the biggest part about owning the channel. If a partner can work his value proposition by just using a Velcro strip and attaching the iPhone to the dashboard, the OEM has actually no benefit from that. So every time you have to combine something that the partner wants to do with something that the vehicle has as terms of information or that he needs as an interaction, which can only be performed by the customer in the vehicle, it needs to go through the OEM. And that's what owning the vehicle channel is all about. And not to be forgotten, if owning the vehicle is a value proposition, it's also about controlling the risk. If you do this infrastructure where it collects all these stuff, you realize that when somebody abuses it, it will kill your reputation. And this is one of the fears that OEMs have had in the past and why they may not have been harder to pursue this. But you come to the point where you realize these processes are core competencies of the OEM all of a sudden again. You know, they outsourced IT the past few years. Now they have to think about insourcing it again because this is a core expertise of the manufacturer. Just as eBay or Amazon are doing this in-house because that's their intellectual property. So this is one of the biggest aspects that will redefine once again on how automotive approaches IT. It will again, at least for a certain aspect of IT, become a core competency. So this is it. 8 automotive success factors to leverage the post-PC paradigm. If you pursue these, maybe not to the full extent at the same time at the beginning, but if you set these as a vision and then pursue them one after another, we believe that you can create a competitive advantage that's much more difficult to copy than any physical product you put on the streets. If you put it on the streets, it's easy to copy because it's easy to see and you can analyze it, and in a matter of a year or two, technology can be copied. We've seen that all over the planet. And at the same time, we've seen that in the post-PC revolution, companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, and all these companies have been able to bridge so many different value propositions into and merge them seamlessly into one large conglomerate that it makes it very hard for the customer to actually be disloyal and leave. So it will really be a huge factor that's difficult to copy, especially, and that should be good news, especially for those companies who are being pursued by very simple vehicle value propositions, cheap and easy. Cheap and easy is the exact opposite of this. This is a premium customer care process, and we believe it's one of the best things we can do to make sure that we stay ahead for a long period of time in automotive. So, who will be first to get it right? Just a quick final look at this. It's a great opportunity. That's how I started my presentation. It's about opportunity, correct? New companies strive on opportunity, Facebook and Starbucks and all that, and they become market leaders, and a lot of the market leaders we see today, of course, started out by opportunity. But when we really look at it, not necessarily they are driven by opportunity, but if you're a market leader, oftentimes you're actually driven by competitive threat. McDonald's did not embrace the McCafe out of an opportunity, but out of competitive threat from Starbucks. And IBM has been able to redefine themselves quite a few times in their lifetime. And a lot of the companies really only when they're faced the end of life of their current business model really look at opportunity and innovation again. Of course, copycats really love if anything new takes place, because they will just copy that business model and try to make money on it, and that works successfully as well. And then of course you have some innovation leaders, and some companies have a niche value proposition where they remain to be leaders. And of course it's going to be interesting to see how Apple will continue and Google will continue. Will they be driven by competitive threat, or will they continue to drive and thrive on opportunity? What's for the automotive industry? I think it's very difficult to see, very hard to see. Difficult paradigm differences between the two worlds, the two industries. On who moves first is left to be seen, but if not for the people here in the room today, who else can give that answer? So let's all work on this and see how it turns out. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.